MAHU, that's our acronym, Architecture and Historic Urban Environments. We're based at the Bartlett School of Architecture at UCL in a really beautiful part of Bloomsbury and super well connected to the rest of the city. Our course sort of looks at historic urban environments twofold. So one is looking ahead at all sorts of planetary crisis and contemporary social and cultural and environmental issues, understanding how in the next decades and centuries we will be working with existing building stock, existing heritage, and how on the other side, understanding how existing inequities are embedded in our historic urban environments, and how as we go forward we negotiate the tensions or address the inequities embedded in both physical and non-physical structures. So how we do this is by going to each of these issues with this intersectional lens, which is through the lens of environmental, racial, and spatial equity. So as mentioned before, with the diversity of the staff and the student cohort, what this means is that everyone comes with a whole wealth of lived experiences and contexts and issues that they're familiar and are interested in. So we really encourage students in our course to understand their own existing context and also bring that knowledge with them to the course in our site in London. So what's quite central to this work is ongoing initiatives at the bigger school level, the Bartlett School of Architecture. They have been piloting a program called Race and Spatial Justice. And this means that at all levels, from curriculum, extracurricular activities, teaching activities, we really address the issues of race and space. And what this means is that the actual bibliographies, the actual seminars and discussions, we really try to make sure that the content is as inclusive as our context in London, but also the demographics of our cohort. And this is an ongoing initiative that ties back to a wider UCL initiative called Inclusive Curriculum Project. You can go into this in more detail online in your own time. Also, outside of maybe teaching activities, we have the two co-directors of equality, diversity, and inclusion with us on the program. And that's Maxwell and Lakshmi. You'll see their names later on the staffing list. What this means is that we really try to integrate both our teaching and extracurricular activities. So whether or not that will be cultural events or external lectures or partnerships with external organizations, we really try to embed this throughout the program in and outside of the classroom. So recently we had the Diwali celebrations in November, and that's something that we pride ourselves on in sort of curating and really hosting these cultural events for ourselves, the program, but also the rest of the school across master's and undergraduate levels. So on the screen here, you'll see an overview of the staff of the core MAHU team. You will be able to find their biographies on the program website and go through those in your own time. But what we have here is really a rich diversity of expertise, both in the professional field, but also in education. So we have colleagues who have developed really rich academic careers as well as careers outside of UCL. So what this means is that we have always this dialogue with the practice in London, in UK and internationally, but also with it being in touch with really interesting contexts. So we have a representation from the Global South, but also we have colleague Zhenya, who is a Ukrainian architect. So ongoing conflicts, ongoing issues of equity the sort of reframing of architectural education through the lens of Global South is very much on our minds. And just now briefly to flesh out what the year looks like for Mayhew. So as many of you will be familiar, the academic year is split into 3 terms. So before Christmas, after Christmas, and post-Easter. In these 3 terms for Mayhew, we start with 3 modules, and then we reduce to 2 modules in term 2. And finally, in term 3, we focus on just 1 module, which is the final project, something that I'll explain a little bit later. So in term 1, we have 3 modules. So that's issues in historic urban environments, which is a course that looks at contemporary issues of historical research in the architectural field. This is a course that's led by Emily and Zhenya. You again see their biographies online. And what you'll be doing here are seminars, but also walks in the city, whereby through tours led by staff members, you'll be able to engage with both contemporary and historic issues through a really embedded site understanding. And that will culminate in an essay of 2,500 words, which will be submitted at the end of the year. The other important component is the design research methods for historic environments. So in the Mayhew program, we have a sort of integration of history and theory and design. So they almost have an equal weighting. So what this means for us is that throughout the year, students both engage with history and theory in different modules, but also they have this big component of design. So in term 1, it is design research. So we look at all sorts of interdisciplinary methods of addressing sites at different scales. So from really strategic scales, looking at policy, down to hyper-local, engaging with community organizations and members through really embedded field work. In term 2, we have design practice, which I'll speak to a slide later. But to conclude term 1, we also have the really brilliant module surveying and recording of cities, which is led by the Survey of London team that's embedded with us on the Mayhew course. This one will introduce students coming from all different backgrounds, methods of historical survey, and how to document different aspects of the city. So very much using London as a testing ground. So we are really fortunate this year to be partnering with St. Anne's, which is a church in Limehouse. They have a charity that's looking at the preservation of its building fabric, but also connecting with their community in East London. So they are our partners this year, which means that we have been developing a lot of connections with different local organizations through them, and have been using Limehouse as a shared site across different modules. So this is quite special to the Mayhew course. We begin the year by sharing a site with everyone on the course, but then later on in term 3, students will be selecting a site of their own choice, whether it's from home, whether it's in London or elsewhere. So we start with a common ground and we move to specificities. And we come on to term 2. So in term 2, we have design practice. So that is the sort of second chapter of design research in the first term. In this module, we are focusing on the propositional side of design. So coming away from design research to think about different forms of architectural propositions, whether or not, again, they are very strategic. So designing frameworks, designing strategies, or really going down to the human and furniture scale. So, designing really intricate responses to small sites around London. What's really interesting and fruitful for us is that this is a group work modules. So students will be working in pairs, so building on their individual design research work in term 1. So within the course, we do really emphasize on individual working, paired working, and also the Mayhew cohort as a collective. This is something that we really nurture throughout the years, and our alumni have attested to how enriching this experiences whilst during the course or beyond. The other component of term 2 is the elective modules. So students will be able to pick a module from within the Bartlett School of Architecture or elsewhere within UCL. And this will be a module that allows the student to explore specifically a subject or a methodology that is of interest to them. So for example, there are courses that are more related to history and theory, but also we have, for example, the 3D scanning course, which uses the most cutting edge technology in helping the students learn how to survey and scan different sites within London or beyond, led by our colleague Thomas Parker. So this elective module component is very open, and you'll be able to go through the UCL catalog, which hosts all the different modules hosted by different schools and departments across the university. And depending on scheduling and interest, we can make it work if you wish to take on something outside of the School of Architecture. And coming on to perhaps the most important part of the program, the final project in term 3. So historically, we've called this component final dissertation, but over the years, this has evolved into a really quite open and interdisciplinary space for students to shape their final project on their own terms. So for some, this is probably more textually led, and that will be following the more traditional dissertation route. But for others, it has become really a ground for testing new forms of architectural representation, architectural documentation. So it can range from exhibitions that students install all the way to websites, all the way to integrated design portfolios that have virtual reality components. So it is very open, and this is something that are shaped by students themselves and their supervisors, which will be assigned to them depending on the interest and the methodology. So often we sort of try to explain this course, this component of the course, as sort of a precursor for your future career or your future, perhaps PhDs. This is a place for you to really shape your methodology that comes from all the different things that you have developed over different modules in the year. What is quite useful for prospective students maybe is to think about, if you do wish to take on PhDs after Mayhew, or if you wish to create a interdisciplinary design and research career after Mayhew, what sort of final project would you like to embark on? That's something that we will ask students in interviews and in the application. So that's something that we're really interested in. And that's, of course, will be shaped by both the Mayhew team and yourselves. But prior to coming in, we really are interested in what sort of sites that you're interested, perhaps from back home, maybe something that ties back to your existing design and research practice. If you come from a background that's outside of the immediate realm of architecture, we're really interested to see how you can bring in your expertise from your other realms of knowledge. So say political science, interior design, historical art curation, etc. So we can answer more questions about this, but I think this is maybe one thing for candidates to contemplate more on. We also hold something called the Autumn Show. So this is a show hosted by the Bartlett School of Architecture by the end of summer. And we've just concluded this a few months ago. But what this is for us is a really brilliant opportunity to showcase the work that students have developed throughout the year, and especially the fruits of the final project. So the Autumn Show is both a physical show and a digital show. You'll be able to access all the projects of our students online on the Bartlett Digital Show website. So this is also something that you can look into in your own time. Each student has a page showing 5 to 6 most important images of their work, but also with links to external websites and further resources for you to tap into. And that's some of our students from just this cohort that graduated. We are sited in Bloomsbury, of course, within the UCL main campus. But what's quite special to UCL and Bartlett School of Architecture is that we have a sister campus all the way in Stratford in East London. So what you'll be able to access is a really, really huge facility in East London that gives you access to all sorts of different workshops, meeting space, computer labs, and also larger spaces where we can host cross-program activities. You'll be also able to track some of our activities live through our Mayhew Instagram page, and you'll be able to access that through this handle on the screen right now. We also host a field trip every year, and this for us is an extremely important part of the education at Mayhew. So those of you who come from architectural backgrounds, you might be quite familiar with the notion of the field trip. So perhaps you've gone on these yourselves. For us at Mayhew, we really try to establish a relationship with local partners. So we've been to Lithuania, we've been to Asmara, and this year we're going to Milan. And in each of these trips, the staff members of Mayhew are bringing together a whole series of their international network contacts to participate in seminars, tours, and also workshops with students in these places around the world. So we don't just go on a trip to have a really enjoyable time together, which it is. We also really integrate our pedagogical principles and activities within the trip. So talking about our wider ethos, so at Mayhew, we really emphasize on an engagement with academic citizenship. And this means for us, we have been for many years hosting open international lecture series with guests from London and across the world. So last year we had David Olusoga giving us his keynote lecture as part of the Modern Heritage in the Anthropocene Symposium, which is also a conference that we hosted. Each year, our different staff members will be curating a series of extracurricular activities. So last year, this was hosted by Edward Dennison, our program director, and this tied together many different institutional partners from Africa and across the world, and brought together different colleagues here again at UCL. So some of our students also presented at the symposium, and it's really a brilliant window to different forms of academic practices for students to think about in terms of future careers. So we also invite increasingly interdisciplinary practitioners. So Cyan Cheng, who's on the screen here to the right, she is an interdisciplinary researcher leading their interdisciplinary course at the Royal School of Royal College of Art in Kensington. And what this means again for us and for students is throughout the year, really continually thinking about your future careers during the course. So whether or not that's something that you're actively thinking about or subliminally thinking about, we integrate all these conversations and connections with really interesting practitioners who are trying to craft out their own individual practice in the architectural expanded field at the moment. So finally, I think just something to end on, we are part of a program cluster. That means that we are sharing resources and having a lot of informal and formal connections with staff and students on other MA programs. So our cousins or partners are architectural history and situated practice. These are also programs that you might be looking at the moment. So do compare them, and maybe in the Q&A session, we can talk to the differences perhaps, and how Mayhew is unique within the program cluster. And yeah, I guess that's a lot of speaking on my part, and I'll stop sharing. And I think maybe for now we can start with a little bit of introduction to the two Mayhew students that I have next to me. So they will be able to also answer questions from you if you have some that are more orientated towards the student experience. So on my left here is Tinsue, and on my right is Zarena. Maybe you can introduce yourselves just briefly.
My name is Zaina. I'm an architect. I have an architecture background. I just did my bachelor's and I'm here. And yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, hi, I'm Qin Xue, and I've been working in Shenzhen as an urban researcher and designer for 5 years, and then I came here. Would like to continue my study afterward and even PhD.
Great. So Van, are you chairing the Q&A session, or am I moderating this as well? Please remind me.
Hi, Jane. It's like you to monitor the whole section, so I will leave it to you
All
to
right.
monitor the Q&A time, because I know you want to do the interactive section with the students. So yeah,
Great.
if anyone have any questions, feel free to type into the chat, and then Jane will be happy to assist you with the questions.
So some of you might be more comfortable typing. We're monitoring the chat, so do type in if that's the preferred option. Otherwise, you can ask verbally. So from Anna, there's a question: what types of paths do students pursue after graduation? This is a brilliant question. So our students, first of all, come from all different types of backgrounds. So we have students coming from urban design, students coming from architecture, students coming from art curation, political science, etc. So this means that the career trajectory is very different for everyone. I would say 50% of the students do wish to stay in London after the course, and 50% return to their home countries, also because of scholarship commitments. In terms of what sort of career path, so we do have a large majority that pursue an architectural practice after the course, but that's also, there are nuances within that. So some will be going to architectural practices, working as designers. Some might try to specialize in historical conservation and heritage planning issues. Others might be interested in strategic work, so working with consultants on strategic visions and research projects. Outside of architecture, we also have many students increasingly going to curation. Some are carving out their PhD practice, and others are, working usually, with different hats on. So we have a lot of students that come from their home countries with a with a track record of advocacy and activism work. So there is probably also, that side of it that relates to practice. What's maybe quite interesting as well, just to touch on the Bartlett School of Architecture as a whole, is that you're exposed really to the best faculty and really a super diverse cohort of students. So for those of you who, say, for example, might be coming from a landscape background, if you're on Mayhew, you're able to access the program, the landscape architecture program, and teachers and students working on that course. So it is really an interdisciplinary space, and we do imagine that at least within the architectural practice, we see that increasingly students do shape them to their own interest. So we are really coming away from the more conventional route of just strictly architectural practice. So I hope that answers your question, Anna. And then another Anna, nice to see you. So thank you for the presentation. What are you looking for in a candidate? So I guess, so coming back to the final project, I think maybe that's a good way to talk backwards. So what we're looking for is students who really have intellectual curiosity and an intellectual drive to develop their own architectural design and research practice. So in this sense, almost treat probably, for those of you who are interested in pursuing PhDs, that you are testing, something that could lead you to that future PhD or your future practice. So in terms of the applications and interviews, we will ask you to talk to your own lived experience and your own practice that you have carved out so far, and also what you would like to develop in Mayhew and what sort of resources and teaching that you hope to gain from in order to sort of nurture this growing practice that you have. So that's maybe, Anna, I will come back to this question again if other questions sort of ask more specifically about criteria and things. So Vicky, this is so this is really useful for getting to know more about courses related to architecture. May I know which should I do instead, dissertation or project for final project? Okay, so for term 3, we call this the final project. And within this bubble, this umbrella, you can choose to do it in a traditional dissertation format, or in any other format that you would prefer. So this is something that maybe you don't know immediately, but something that we actively have a conversation with throughout the year. So to answer your question, it can be either, both, or integrated. So some students have do the dissertations in the more traditional style, but they also test ways of integrating visual and other media to the project. So Lisa, hi, I cannot find information. I remember reading beginning with that early. So Lisa is asking about early applications, and Van has already answered that. So I will move on to the next question. So Natasha asks, is the course accredited as an RIBA Part 2 in architecture for becoming an architect? So Mayhew is not an accredited course, but as some of you will know, the UK ARB, so the Architects Registration Board, is actively reshaping architectural education in the UK at the moment. And this means that there is the traditional route of Part 1 and Part 2 RIBA, but what's going in parallel is a new course called MSci. It's spelled MSCI. And what this means is that instead of 5 years, you can do 4 years. So within this, some students might be considering, so say, for example, if eventually you don't want to do Part 2, but you do want to sort of conclude the UCL career with an MA, some of you might choose to do Mayhew. So Mayhew, instead of, it is a 12-month program, so it's from September to September. It's not accredited, but many students come with Part 2 qualifications. So depending on where you're from in the world, and all sorts of academic backgrounds that you might have, we don't have a standard sort of template of what qualification students come with. But I would say that at least 50% of students on Mayhew would have completed the equivalent of Part 2 before joining us. But of course, the other 50% would be coming from different backgrounds, some not in architecture even. So we get a mix. So hopefully that answers your question, Natasha. Kezia, I hope I'm not butchering the pronunciation. So, hi, I'm from Bachelor of Architecture. I'm really pursuing with history architecture. I am an Indonesian, but want to learn more about my own country architectural history. Can UCL help me to learn more about it? So, thank you for that question. And this is maybe something that students, so Zarina and Tinsu can speak to. So I would just say very briefly, this is something that many students on the Mayhew course are interested in, and we do try to find students who are interested in their own local context. So in the sort of structure of Mayhew, what happens is that at the beginning, students join the course and use London as a shared site. And this means that you learn all sorts of different tools of documentation, surveying, writing about architectural history with London as the testing ground. After this initial phase, because you would have all, discussed the same site and be using all sorts of different methodologies on the same site, you carry those methodologies and knowledge with you to tackle, any other context that you might be interested in. So for some people, it might be their home country. For some people, it's more regional. So, maybe looking at sort of regional architecture that's shared across several countries. But what we also try to do is to link you to supervisors who have specific expertise in certain areas of the world. So for the final project, when you are paired with a supervisor, the supervisor would be able to guide you through that process in developing a project, say, on your home country in Indonesia. We do get Indonesian students every year, and our Indonesian students also come from, different places in India. So sometimes we have a more urban focus, sometimes more rural. But it is really an exciting place because we also, through our alumni network, will be able to connect you to Mayhew alumni that have worked in maybe similar contexts, or be able to signpost you to contexts at home that can enrich your final project. So thank you for that question. And where are we? Oh yeah, sorry, Serena. Let me just rotate the screen a little bit. Serena.
I just want to answer that question. Even I came here wanting to learn more about how Indian architecture and Indian history works. So being over here, you won't learn about in your specific country's architecture or what. You learn how to look at your country's work. Like over here, they use London as a case study. So for example, we had a lecture of housing histories. So they talk about the housing histories of London. So you understand how they're looking at the problems and what are the factors that they look at. And then after the lecture, we have discussions of our home countries' problems and places where they help us look at it in a different way. Or you hear of different countries having similar issues and you're able to compare them. So it's a very good basis to understand what you have to do when you're looking back in your own home countries and own problems. Like, for example, we have 3 modules. So one module has to be in Limehouse because you have to go to the site to understand what you are tackling. But then in the other issues, you can take problems from back home that you want to talk about, and then they're able to guide you on what you want to do. So it's like a combination. You get to decide what you want to work on.
Tinsia, do you want to speak to that?
And also, I just want to add one more thing, because in London, there were such a huge resources for archives from different countries, so you will be able to get access to those archives that have some information of your own home country even. So which is a really good advantage to study in London here specifically. Yeah.
Thank you both. So let's see, what else do we have? Vicky, okay, Vicky, I think we've answered that question. Joanna, how much does research and design intertwine within the program? How theory and history of architecture are being involved in the course? And what level of freedom does one have regarding the final project? Okay, so let's take this question into two parts. So regarding the sort of intersection of history and theory, design and research. So for us, this is highly integrated. And what this means is that just from purely the methodological level in different modules, you will be speaking to both design and history and theory in any module that you undertake here at Mayhew. What this means that is perhaps the emphasis is different depending on which module you are operating within. So say, for example, in the design research module in term 1, you will be actually more focused on issues of history and theory than propositional work, but then that directly informs propositional work in term 2. So to answer your question, it is highly integrated, and what's really unique to the course is that our staff members of the Mayhew program really have constant dialogue with each other. So we understand student trajectories in different modules taught by different tutors, and sort of understand holistically where your journey is within the program. So for some of you who are probably more history and theory inclined, we will try to nourish that. If some of you are more designers, we will, find a way to sort of, help you build that practice with an expanded understanding and sensitivity to history and theory issues. So it's very integrated, to answer your question. And then the second part of the question, what level of freedom does one have regarding the final project? So a high degree of freedom, I would say. And what is usually the challenge for students is to find a scope that is specific and precise enough for the final project. So it is, I've been saying this, that it is a precursor to a PhD, and in thinking, from that analogy, is that it is not a PhD as well, because given, the size of the module, so you will only have a few months to develop this project. So it's the freedom in the subject is quite open, but then in terms of how to narrow down the project so that you can manage it well and actually develop it with a lot of depth, this is something that you will be doing in dialogue with your supervisor. So to maybe summarize, it is a lot of freedom, but then the specifics of it and more on the methodological side, you will be sort of shaping that together with your tutor. So Anna asks, would you be able to expand on the differences between the 3 MA programs within the cluster? So thank you for that. You will be able to see the more detailed program descriptions on the Bartlett School of Architecture website. What I would say to that is that with the Mayhew program, it is very diverse in terms of our demographic and also our interdisciplinary nature. So with architectural history and situated practice, they have their own realms of reference, and I won't try to explain their courses. You can also check out the recordings of their open days. But what I would say is that the dialogue between the programs is a really special sort of unique quality to the Bartlett School of Architecture, because you will be able to have an expanded access to different colleagues and their research practices, but also understand how your work situates within the wider architectural discourse. Understanding, in sort of within the school, but also beyond in your future careers, your positionality in this expanded field at the moment. So thank you, Anna. And let's see, Natasha, are there students that after the course continue an MArch Part 2 program? I find Mayhew a unique course into understanding the urban environment. I want to become an architect, but would find it incredibly useful to attend this course as well. So Natasha, this has happened with our alumni. So some of our students, they do Mayhew first and then go on to study in London in other schools of architecture for Part 2, or stay within UCL for Part 2. So that is a route that some of us take. Bieta, sorry again for the pronunciation. Which job prospects align with this particular course? Does it go something like an architectural historian or an urban planner? So I've spoke to this a little bit earlier, but in terms of the career prospects, I would say, again, it's very diverse, but what we do hope and what we're starting to see is that students, no matter where they occupy, so whether it's urban planning or architectural design or heritage conservation, so after Mayhew, you're equipped with really an understanding of the strategic framework of these realms. And what this means is that no matter where you are in your careers after Mayhew, you are likely to be able to be occupying, space in terms of having an understanding and take on the strategic framework of your future practice. So we hope that, students, whether or not you're staying in London, UK, or going back to your home countries, that you'll be really able to, shape things upstream. And this is something that we're, starting to see. But I think to answer your question, it is diverse, but maybe the common thread is that students, they've come to the course with their lived experience, but they've also, seen and interacted with so many international students on the course, and coming away from it is this really international understanding of analogous sites around the world, analogous contexts, relationships, professional relationships that you might have with each other after the course. So that's something that is really special to the Mayhew program. So you want a more practical question? Okay, the practical question is answered by Van. So I'll leave that to Van. And then Oriwan, again, apologies for the pronunciation. Is it possible to combine my research studies with different experts from other universities specialized in history and anthropology of Islamic art and architecture, like SOAS and Oxford, under the supervision of this master program? This is a really wonderful question. We have in the past facilitated this for the final project. So this is, let's say, a one-off situation usually. So within each year, we might have one or two students that have supervision from other colleagues from institutions such as SOAS. But yes, so this is it will depend on availability, of course. So there's the logistical question, but also your subject matter. So for example, for the Mayhew program, sometimes we do reach out to colleagues outside of the School of Architecture, so other colleagues based in other departments at UCL, but also long-term relationships that we've established with colleagues in University of Westminster, London School of Architecture, etc. So thank you for that question.
Bieta, sorry. Thank you. With the separate part 2 and part 3 architecture courses, will they still exist whilst the MSci course? Yes, it will still exist. So this is a really long-term transition. So for more details, you need to go back to the BSc and the MSci program websites, but it is long-term, and in this immediate year, they will run in parallel. What software skills are being taught, and what skills are you expected to know prior to the start of the course? So maybe the first part of the question, I'll let Zarina and Ticia speak to that. But for the second part, what skills are you expected? So this would depend on your background. So for example, we don't expect an architectural historian to, apply to the course with an understanding of, say, CAD programs. But if you do come from a design background, of course, we do hope that you have competencies in certain softwares. So it will be depending on your background. We try to accept students from a range of different backgrounds, which means that you also be able to learn from each other as much as from tutors and the school. So, and on this note, maybe Tincia and Zarina, you can speak to what sort of softwares and techniques you've learned so far on the program.
For software skills, I think in the module I've chosen 3D scanning, so we're going to learn all softwares of how to 3D scan a location even if you're there or not there. But UCL is an amazing university to be a part of. There are online courses for any software that you can possibly imagine: Revit, Rhino, anything you want to do. There are number of seats, and these courses repeat itself throughout the year. So during the first term, all the courses are there. You can, if you're unable to get a seat in the first term, you can get them in the second term. So for softwares, what you need in during this course, you don't have to worry, because they accept every format that as long as you're able to get your work across.
Right.
I would say the software, as long as you can express your idea clearly, all softwares are really welcome, like even hand drawings and like sketches, film maybe, so it's quite diverse, as long as it's to express your intention.
Thank you both. And then let's see, so Lorelei, again, sorry for the pronunciation. Do you think it will be more beneficial for us to have some sort of job experience prior to applying for this master's course? And if so, in which fields would you recommend us to get into? This is a brilliant question. Thank you. So we do really hope that students apply with previous professional experience. So a lot of us on the program would have worked for a year or a few years, depending again from where you're from. In terms of what specifically, that entirely has to do with your academic background. So, for example, if you are coming from a political science background, then probably having worked in policy or consultancies would be, quite beneficial. If you're an architect, like whether or not it's professional, practicing professionally or volunteering projects. If you're interested in conservation, maybe, you have participated in advocacy and activism groups in the past at home. So we don't just look at, let's say, strictly professional experience, but also other activities that you might have initiated or participated in. So is there any historical preservation knowledge involved in the program? So thank you for that question. So we do talk about historical preservation, firstly from a theoretical sense, so understanding how that has evolved in the UK throughout time. And so we start from this level of understanding the history of it, the current policies, and what that means for planning and design. In terms of the technical, aspects of historical preservation, we do not have, something specifically that, devotes to that. But then there are other courses in UCL that you can tap into. So courses and resources in UCL that you can tap into. So Natasha, okay, another question for Serena and Tingxue. So what is the balance between design projects and research? Also, have you studied your BA in London as well? Okay, great. Who wants to? Okay, Tingxue, you can speak to that.
What's it? Oh, actually, this term is it's a research lead design. So there is no design for this term, but the next term will be like research through design. Yeah, I would say that's
design through research.
Design through. Yeah. Sorry, the other way around. Yeah,
both are valid.
Yeah, both are valid because this term is, for instance, like based on the 3 modules we've learned, you will get you will sort of for the Survey of London module, you will get access to many like research methods you collect, such as how to do an oral history, how to do a film methods, research methods, or even how to use archive and how to recording and serving the ancient building by using those REDM stuff. So it's quite diverse. So you in this term, you kind of like collecting all the tools in your toolkits for like sharpen your research abilities. And I would say it's quite like I really like that because I had a BA in London before in Central St. Martin, so it's just quite different because in a BA in Central St. Martin, which is quite like emphasis on your fine art based and conceptualized stuff, but in here it's really like hardcore research method and the design. How can you do the design through your foundation of your research? Yeah, so you will notice that it will like make you re-examine the notion that you take it for granted before, for example, like the colonialism idea or post-colonial idea, etc. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think I'm going to repeat what she said. Term 1 is more of research, and then term 2 is what I've understood is what you understood from the research and how we can do it in design. They help link the gap between research and design. Like we understand how to research, we know design, but sometimes you're unable to see the process through. So it helps you trying to connect both of them. And I think you asked the question, have you studied a bachelor's in London? I haven't. I studied my bachelor's in India. And I think you asked it because of sometimes the difference between our education systems back home to what it is here. It's going to be fine. Our faculty here is amazing and they help that transition really well. And there are a lot of things that you haven't learned that you are expected to produce in your submissions here, but they explain it all. And if you have any problem, you can always go and ask them properly. So if you're like scared of the gap, it'll be a very smooth transition.
Thank you both. Okay, Victor, thank you for providing this platform. Is there a space where we can review previous student work? And from the student's point of view, what tips would you give prospective students during the application process? So the second question is for you two. The first question, so you will be able to access the student work from previous years through the Autumn Show website. So if you search Bartlett School of Architecture Autumn Show, and depending on whether or not you want to see the work from this year or previous years, once you click into those websites, you'll be able to see each of the projects more individually. But Van has also very helpfully shared the Mayhew Instagram page, but also the online catalog of the student work, which is a more condensed overview of the student work from each year. So I leave the question to you two. What tips would you give prospective students during the application process?
I'm going to tell you what I did. I don't know if that's what they actually look for, but rather than focusing on like the software skills that you have or like making your portfolio extremely graphically amazing, like focus on more what you are. Like I'm an architect, so what I look at a design, like what's my like process and design, what it is that I'm interested in, what is I want to continue, like my unique perspective on architecture, as well as what I want to continue doing, like through it can be through images as well, like photographs which you take off from wherever you are. You have to like show yourself in the portfolio, like your unique perspective of wanting to learn more about everything around you. And well, I guess I'm here, so that worked.
Thank you, Zarina and Tinsia.
For me, like yeah, as Lina said, software is not an issue at all, and I focus more on my previous working experience and knowledge in global South area in Shenzhen, and how I would like to develop or transfer this my previous experience to Mayhew as well, and how can I maybe do a comparative study in here. So maybe focus more on how like your heart for sharing and learning. Yeah.
Great. I think
Thank
you
you.
two have answered it beautifully. I just to maybe tie those two answers together. So we, as Zarina and Tinsia is saying, we really look for your individual voice. So and a certain degree of confidence in that voice and the uniqueness of that voice. So as much as skills and again competencies are important, we're interested in intellectually what you're interested in, how you have approached that in the past, and how we can help you shape that going forward, and also to understand what you want to get out of Mayhew. So it is really reciprocal. As much as you bring in knowledge, of course we nurture your practice and Mayhew. So understanding the potential of that is really important for us in the application process. So I think Natasha has a question for Van, which I'll leave to Van. And question for students. Great. Okay. So what are you researching in your projects? Okay.
Okay. So we have 3 modules. I'm going to explain in very, very brief what I'm doing in all the 3 modules. And it's a really good question because both of us have so different perspectives of exactly the same thing. Like, so the first module, which is design research methods, we have taken Limehouse as our site. So you saw a church, a picture right next to it is the town hall. So I guess my research in that particular thing is it's been used by a community as an art studio space. Like they rent out the rooms in Old Town Hall for artists to use, and the community comes together to do the restoration and preservation of the project. So I'm focusing on that, is how the old historic building becomes an identity for the community because the community is helping restore it and preserve it, and more on that basis of community restoration as well as identity of a community through spaces. For issues, I'm actually focusing on a problem back home. So I'm from India in a city called Pune, where there's a canton. It was a British military settlement. So there are 2 streets with colonial architecture, which is kind of disappearing. So I want to say, again, comes back to identity of the street. It's four generations back, my family has been on the street. So I feel like that part of the history shouldn't be erased, and understanding of how preserving that street is also preserving a part of our history which shouldn't be forgotten. Like I guess identity again of people who live over there. And then for the last one, survey and recording, you can either focus on a structure and do the methods that you've learned in the lectures about surveying and recording that one building, but I'm focusing more on methods. So painting as a methodology to preserve buildings. Before camera, that no matter how much you write, painting is what they would use to see what it was in the past. So I think we haven't had our discussions about this yet, but I'm trying to look at paintings before camera of the view of Thames rather than the function of Thames, more of what Thames represented to these painters, like the essence of the river. And I'm focusing on the methodology of painting, preserving it rather than just text.
Great.
Mm.
Okay, and then let's hear it from Tinsue.
Yeah, for the project in Limehouse, my focus is on how the Limehouse functions as the rival city by providing those lodging facilities such as shelters, cellars, hostels, and those which provided by those social welfare organizations. So like I was trying to to evaluate to what extent Limehouse function as those function as an rival city, and how this interrelationship between the stakeholders who get involved with those construction and operation, and those vulnerable people, and the spatial prototype of those lodging buildings. And for my issue essays, so I'm focusing on a printing plant in Warping, which is not far from Limehouse, and how it was demolished by the developers nowadays, and how those collective memory of trade union, print unions have been destroyed, and how can we preserve the collective memories as well, and who had the right to select or to filter the history. For the survey and recording of London, I'm more focusing on a listed building provided for workers in 20th century at that time. So I would like to see how those building can no, I was thinking more like how the worker at that time, their daily life, and how they related to those dormitories and the factories. Yeah.
Great. I hope, Natasha, that gives you a little snippet of what the students are up to. So do the research topics in term one continue in the final project, like talking about the same building typology? Great question. So not necessarily. It can, if you're interested in continuing that thread of thought, but it doesn't have to. So in terms of, how much you want to bring directly from term one and term two into your final project is entirely up to the student. And Lisa, are all the modules in first and second terms based on group work? Great question. So no, you will have the opportunity to do both individual, paired, and group work. So this is something that is tailored so that you get a combination of different ways of working together before you embark on this individual final project. So Lisa, I hope that answers your question. I think we might be nearing the end of this session. So if anyone has more questions, please just drop it in and we'll try to answer it before we wrap up. So Van, you want to help us wrap up?
Yes, so thank you everyone for attending our virtual open day today. It's great to have all of you here, and great to receive a lot of questions sending in to the chat, so that we can somehow support you in your application process at UCL. It's great to make a very engaging section. So just a quick reminder that this session is being recorded, so the recording will be available on our YouTube channel very soon, I guess sometime next week. So if any of you who want to review it or who missed the session today, you can keep an eye out on the Bartlett YouTube channel, and then our recording gonna available there in the playlist, a virtual open day sometime next week. So yes, I think if you have any further questions to ask about the course, feel free to reach out to Jane and any relevant contacts on the website. to support you with the application process. And because we are over the time now, so I think that we should wrap up soon. Thank you very much for joining today, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. It was very, very helpful.
Thank you. Bye-bye.